Hello, this is Mark Sheffield. Welcome to my channel, The Literary Professor. My education and experience in the field of English will help you achieve a higher level of skill in every area of great writing. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. The title of today's episode is How to Create Coherent Compositions. The Socratic method of composition, which emphasizes logical connectedness, will help you a great deal in the matter of coherence. Empty shapes, such as the 5-paragraph format, often lead to disjointed, disconnected writing that reeks of insincerity. Let's begin with that term, coherence. True coherence is found through the use of techniques of cohesion, or filling the gaps, also known by many other names such as natural structure, connectedness, linkage, flow, bridge building, artistic order or plot, anticipation, sequence, or thread. Coherence is the characteristic of writing that makes the various ideas in an essay become one big idea. Instead of seeming to be a disconnected collection of sentences and paragraphs, coherent writing contains sentences and paragraphs that work together for a common purpose. Without cohesion, readers are forced to decipher the connections between apparently disconnected ideas. Readers have to write the composition. As a writer, you should never want the reader to do anything but comprehend what you are attempting to say and enjoy doing it. Consider the word music. Do you realize that a great piece of writing is similar to a great piece of music? Individual notes mean little when not added to other notes. Notes in music must be in context, just as sentences in good writing. If those notes create a pleasing harmony, the musician has succeeded. The notes flow along naturally. No musician hands you a bunch of notes and ask you to put them together. They say Mozart heard his compositions as one giant chord. From our perspective today, we know how that might be possible. Mozart was hearing the DNA of his music. Coherence is the characteristic of writing that makes the various parts of an essay stick together. You know that a composition is coherent if it could be separated into its individual sentences, and then those sentences could be recombined back into the original order. Just because a writer places two ideas together doesn't mean the reader understands what the writer is trying to say. The writer is being incoherent. The 5-paragraph style encourages a basic kind of coherence. For instance, if a writer says, "My first point is," and "My second point is," and so on, that writer is being coherent, sort of. To increase coherence, the 5-paragraph writer depends heavily on the classic transition words such as furthermore, consequently, next, or finally. However, there are more sophisticated techniques for creating coherence. You can use synonyms, pronouns, or repetitions to connect ideas together. How these techniques work has to be explained. All transitions do something you might not realize. They not only point the reader forward, but they also point the reader backward. I'm sure this makes no sense to you, but let me give you an example. Here are two simple sentences. Jose made it through Army boot camp. It gave him much more self-confidence. What does the simple pronoun it actually do in this sentence? The word it brings the phrase Army boot camp forward by pointing backwards, that is, to the antecedent. But the notion of an antecedent applies to more than just pronouns. Let's continue exploring this concept. Teachers of the 5-paragraph form tend to emphasize classic transitions as opposed to the other techniques I've mentioned. However, the classic transitions are very useful. They do connect, they do point forward and backward, but they are the least powerful ways to create coherence. Having a mere list of transitional words is nice, but don't think that this list of words will automatically help you create a truly coherent essay. Classic transitions can create the illusion of coherence. Socrates advocated a much deeper sort of coherence, the coherence of logically connected content. It's time for an example from a professional writer. There was some great journalism written during World War II. Just before the war began, the major democratic powers, Great Britain and the French Republic, attempted to create a peaceful settlement with the two fascist powers, Germany and Italy. The result was the so-called Munich Agreement. In hindsight, this agreement was nothing more than a surrender to Adolf Hitler's demands for an expansion of German territory. One of those fine journalists of World War II was Dorothy Thompson, also known as the First Lady of American Journalism. On October 1st, 1938, she published an article about the Munich Agreement that had been concluded just the day before. She believed that the promised peace was in fact a sham. Here are the first 4 sentences of her article. Quote, "What happened on Friday is called peace. Actually, it is an international fascist coup d'etat. The Four-Power Accord is not even a diplomatic document. It is certainly not a normal treaty. It is such a fantastic piece of paper that it is difficult to describe except as a hurriedly concocted armistice made in advance of a war to permit the occupation by German troops of a territory which by sheer threat and demonstration of force they have conquered by agreement." Unquote. This section of the article contains only one classic transition, the word actually. This word does its job perfectly. However, Thompson depends on 2 other means of creating connectedness. The word it is repeated 3 times. She depends on it as a replacement for Munich Agreement. But she also used synonyms to explain. Note the number of times she renames the Munich Agreement. She calls it peace, she calls it a coup d'etat, then the Four-Power Accord, then a diplomatic document, then not a normal treaty, then a fantastic piece of paper, then a hurriedly concocted armistice, and finally an agreement. Each of these expressions is loaded with commentary and opinion. In her view, the Munich Agreement was a fake peace, an act of violence, abnormal, a fantasy, a slapdash collection of nonsense, and an air quotes version of agreement. What can I say? Thompson turned synonyms into a hammer to smash the fraudulent Munich Agreement. And events proved her right. World War II started exactly 1 year after the Munich Agreement was signed. So much for peace in our time, as the British signatory Neville Chamberlain exclaimed on September 30, 1938. As with many rules and guidelines, there are exceptions. Instead of working hard to be coherent, you could intentionally create incoherence for some rhetorical purpose. This should be rare, of course, but I've seen it work. In poetry, unclear connections happen a lot. The poet may ask the reader to create the relationship between 2 images or ideas that are simply placed side by side. The effect can be quite strange, even mystical. The poet does this to create some sort of new thought into the mind of the reader. This thought has been discovered, not explained. Years ago, I read an interesting opinion piece by Anna Quindlen in Newsweek magazine. It was called Connecting Up the Dots. See the link in the description. She was arguing for reproductive rights in the state of Mississippi, but her position was not stated directly, ever. Instead, Quindlen intentionally provided no connections between ideas. Her title was the clue to her method. She merely repeated a long list of facts about women's health in Mississippi. She ended the essay with these 2 sentences. Sometimes you don't even have to state an opinion, you just have to state the facts. The reader would make the connections and surmise the purpose of the essay. She must have felt that the facts said it all, and if you read her essay for yourself, I think you would agree. Nobody misses her point. As I said, such examples are exceedingly rare, and you must not forget that a writer's job is to be clear and readable. The proper coherence is vital in achieving that goal. I hope to see you again in the next episode, where I will continue to add to your knowledge of all things English.